This is University Drive in FAU, which could be renamed to Charlie James Kirk Drive. FAU is one of dozens of Florida colleges facing the change, and the possibility is already sparking debate. 40 different streets in Florida colleges may all have a similar new name. Filed by Republican State Representative Kevin Steele on Tuesday, House Bill 113 proposes renaming specific roads after Charlie Kirk. FAU is one of them on the list, and it's a move that some are supporting.
I think the sentiments of the bill are well warranted. Charlie Kirk was, I personally believe, the most influential figure politically, spiritually, of his generation.
Also up for possible change of road names is Indian River State College and Palm Beach State College.
It would only make sense that we would have his name plastered on as many university campuses as we possibly can.
But if schools don't follow the rules 90 days after the bill becomes a law, they could lose state funding.
This is definitely coercive. If the universities and their students wanted to do it, they could do it by themselves. But the state is forcing this measure on every public college.
The possibility is not a surprise to FAU Democrat President Nicholas Ostheimer, but it's a move he's against.
Charlie Kirk is not a martyr. He is not a hero. He is a victim of gun violence and political violence. I hope it fails. I mean, this is the definition of violating home rule.
So our colleges and universities can lose funding, lose money for their students because they're not going to rename a street on their campus after a rage-baiting podcaster. I wish I could say Florida has lost the plot, but the fact that 40 new roads being renamed on college campuses after Charlie Kirk is happening in that state is something I'm not surprised by. In fact, it's the least surprising thing I've heard all week. There's just a bill filed in Florida that said if state colleges don't rename certain roads on their campuses Charlie Kirk Drive or Charlie Kirk Avenue, that they could lose state funding. In fact, the specific verbiage says state funds shall be withheld from any state university or Florida college system institution whose board of trustees fails to redesignate the roadway or portion of a roadway listed in subsections 1 and 2 respectively within 90 days after the effective date of this act. So what you're telling me is that it's not just schools like the University of Florida or Florida State. No, it includes FAMU, which is an HBCU, a right-wing activist who did not hold political office, who was not a public servant. This country is beyond unserious, and this situation is exactly an example of why that statement is true. This is what happens when somebody becomes a martyr. A martyr, okay? Charlie Kirk is being martyred. There's no reason why we should be naming streets after him in Florida or withholding state funding from schools because they don't want to name a street after him. And don't even go and compare this to Martin Luther King or Malcolm X because, yes, we have streets named after them, but they were fighting in the civil rights movement.
Boy. So we got to talk about the latest hilarious meltdown from black liberals who are triggered by Florida Republicans moving to force colleges to rename at least one of their streets after Charlie Kirk, which, hey, it's neither here nor there for me, to be honest with you. I just find it to be funny. If we can have a bunch of roads in the United States, in every city of the United States of America named after MLK, right? And, we can have statues of George Floyd and all this other stuff. Yeah, we should be able to have some roads named after Charlie Kirk, right? Charlie Kirk Boulevard doesn't sound too bad, right? But apparently to black liberals, it sounds like a nightmare, right? And that's what I want to react to. Roland Martin, boohoo, whined and cried, melting down over the possibility that some HBCUs may be forced to rename one of their roads after Charlie Kirk. So without further ado, let's get into it.
Deranged white conservatives doing all they can to turn Charlie Kirk into a saint. Of course, he was shot and killed last month, speaking in Utah. Now in Florida, a Republican state rep wants every public university to rename certain campus roads after Kirk. Yeah. Kevin Steele's bill would also withhold state funding from any university that does not comply within 90 days of the law's passage. Not happening just in Florida. Similar bills are popping up across the country as part of a wave of memorial efforts for Kirk. Yeah. Florida State Senator Shevrin Jones joins us right now. I'm glad to have you on the show. This is just insane. This particular bill, what they want to do and say, oh, universities do not comply, we're going to pull funding. I'm sorry, Charlie Kirk is not worthy of a memorial on every public university campus in Florida or anywhere else in this country.
Yeah, I mean, that's your opinion, though, right? That's your opinion, okay? I think ultimately at the end of the day, it's up for the people to decide, right? I'm sure there are people who had reasons to believe that MLK should not be honored the way that he's honored today, right? That, hey, maybe MLK isn't somebody that deserves to have a street named after him in every city in America, right? There are people who feel like that, right? But does that make their opinions valid? Not necessarily, right? At the end of the day, you know, if the lawmakers in a state say, hey, we should do this, and the people are okay with it, right, then, hey, it is what it is, right? I don't see anything wrong with it, because to millions of people, Charlie Kirk was a civil rights activist. He fought for the rights of Christians. He fought for the rights of parents not to have their kids be exposed to gender ideology in schools, right? To be brainwashed in schools. He's fought on behalf of women, fighting for the right to not have to compete with biological men in sports. I mean, again, he's fought for things that people feel are legitimate issues to fight for. And because of that, yeah, I mean, a lot of people think that he should be honored. His influence, certainly much more influential than Roland Martin is over the black community, right? His influence in the conservative movement, right? Charlie Kirk's influence in the conservative movement in this country, I mean, again, was big enough that I think it does warrant him being honored, right? Because regardless of whether or not you agree or disagree with his political opinions, he went about expressing his political opinions in a non-violent way. He explicitly preached non-violence, okay? So, you know, I mean, people like Roland Martin, the black liberals, they're going to boo-hoo on and cry. But to me, it's entertainment. And one of the reasons why it's so funny to me is because these people try to push George Floyd down our throat, right? You mean to tell me you can push George Floyd down our throat? We can have murals, statues of George Floyd, all this stuff, like we can have all this stuff celebrating a criminal, right? Celebrating a criminal who contributed nothing to society positively, okay? Positively. What he contributed overall in the legacy of his death has led to more chaos and destruction in these liberal cities, right? You mean to tell me we can honor somebody like that only because he died at the hands of a police officer, a white police officer, in which, I mean, I personally believe that, you know, the intoxicants in his system had more to do with his death than Derek Chauvin. But hey, that's neither here nor there. The point is that if somebody like him can be honored, why can't Charlie Kirk? And Charlie Kirk certainly has lived a life with a much more positive impact than somebody like George Floyd, right? And again, Charlie Kirk died at the hands of a political assassin. So, you know, it's just funny to me because I know why these people are so upset, because they see the BLM stuff being erased, right? Again, this is culture stuff. Black Lives Matter has been erased. Now we're ushering in an era where essentially you're having conservatives be honored, right? Versus what we used to do, which we used to honor criminals, right? Now we're honoring people who actually contributed positive to society, and these people can't stand it.
Yeah. Yeah, well, first, Roland, yeah, I'm gonna say, like my nephews say it. I always say to tell the state of Florida to stop capping. I'll tell you why. Yeah, the Representative Steele filing this bill and not even having a Senate companion yet. But I do know Florida very well, and so I know that now that the bill has been filed, eventually something probably will come. But the Senate president has told us that he does not want a culture war. And it's no secret that this is an absolute overreach. And for decades, the universities have made their own naming decision. Nobody from Tallahassee or the governor's office have ever stepped into this process. And I've been in this process for 13 years. Now, suddenly they want to force institutions to name roles after Charlie Kirk. And just clear it's not policy. And I'll be honest with you, it's absolute political theater. And so let's be clear, yeah, that we've made it clear in the Democratic caucus, and we said it today, even in the press conference, that violence is never acceptable. And we should all condemn it. But dying violently doesn't erase a man's record. Charlie Kirk, as we know, he built a career off of the race baiting, off of mocking black folks, and off of spreading division. Now, here's what I will say, Roland.
Again, is that not what Roland Martin's doing, right? Is he building a career off that same thing, right? Since you're so opposed to that, I think that you should have a problem with the guy that you're interviewing, right? I would argue that he's building a career off of the exact same things this guy accused Charlie Kirk of building his career based off of.
As a FAMU graduate, it is an absolute slap in the face to the #1 HBCU within this country. So now you're telling that if we don't name a particular role after Charlie Kirk, now we risk getting funding. And so, yes, as a proud graduate, I mean, the names of those roles that are on FAMU's campus, now that you want it to change, they honor the people who built that legacy through the blood, sweat, and tears. People who made sure students like me could walk those grounds with pride. And so I can tell you that we're going to fight like hell in the Senate, because we're meeting with the Senate president not just as a Black caucus, but as a Democratic caucus, because we were able to stop a lot of these bills last year. And we are going to try to do the same this session. The problem is if Donald Trump gets into the ear of the leadership of these chambers, the game is over. They're going to push this all the way through and as far as they can.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to hurt, right? I don't think it's going to be that bad, right? I don't think that your life is going to be negatively affected by some roads being named after Charlie Kirk. Again, I just find these people being so triggered by this to be so hilarious to me, right? So hilarious. Because I think part of this, again, is happening because of the fact that they celebrated the death of Charlie Kirk. And because they celebrated it, now, again, there's an effort to basically say, hey, you know what? Yeah, Charlie Kirk's legacy is actually going to grow now. It's growing because you celebrated his death, right? That's the crazy part about it. That's what these people don't understand.
And so now the question is, will MAGA appoint presidential appointee Marva, the woman who's president of Florida A&M, is she going to have the courage to tell them, y'all, that is not a good idea on my campus?
Well, Roland, I don't know if you heard, but you see that, I'm sure you know, that you have this Blexit that's about to go across the country to HBCU homecomings, and they'll be here at Florida A&M on the 17th. I have not spoken to President Johnson as of yet, but I do know, and I don't know if you all remember, but a year before last, in the bill that was filed, which was the Stop Woke Act, it prevented that any institution that stops any diverse conversations of happening on their college campus, you are now in violation of the law. And so the question now becomes, if these universities push back on this, are they violating the law? And I could be honest with you, the Student Government Association president and the faculty and staff at Florida A&M University, they have now gotten wind of this and have made the clarion call to the legislature to make it clear that they do not want this on their campus. And I'm hoping that President Johnson, where I sit on her transition team, and I'm sure that this is a conversation that we would love to engage in. And what does this look like in us moving forward with this type of legislation on a predominantly Black campus, when we know what this man has said about Black people and more particularly Black women?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure you don't know what he said about Black people, Black women. But anyways, again, I just find this to be funny, right? How this one particular Republican representative is making these Black people freak out and panic over the idea that a street will be named after Charlie Kirk on their college campus. It's just, again, it's just funny to me how triggered these people are getting. Regardless of if this happens, if it doesn't happen, all I'm saying is this, right? I mean, if we can build statues of George Floyd, right? Then I'm trying to figure out what is the real argument against naming some streets after Charlie Kirk. I'm just saying. The fact that these people are upset about this, but they weren't upset about the George Floyd stuff, shows you how ass backwards a lot of people in this country really are. So let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective. Peace.